Good evening, everybody, and welcome to Carving It Up Live right here on Twitter, as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. As always, I am Bryson Carver. Very, very excited to be in this seat today to talk about a lot of NBA playoff basketball. Barry Grant Jr. of the All Even Podcast is going to stop by for a brief moment, about 15 minutes, to discuss the Los Angeles Lakers firing their head coach, Darvin Ham. He had sources that said that this was going to happen by today. Sure enough, it happens today. More on that in about 15 minutes. Our thoughts on that. Why I think both of us believe it was the right move for the Lakers, and why this whole Darvin Ham being the scapegoat thing is a little overblown. Going to get to that in a second. In 15 minutes. Also, Milwaukee Bucks get eliminated by the Indiana Pacers. Why Giannis should leave. I believe he will leave this offseason. I'll detail that in about 30 minutes to 45 minutes or so as well. Why the Clippers collapse against the Dallas Mavericks is the second least shocking thing in the playoffs. The least shocking is obviously the Lakers getting bounced by Denver. Get to that later in the show. Playoff predictions for the second round. Yes, I know we still have 2 first-round series going, but I'll predict those series. Again, I'll do like Magic and Magic and Cleveland. Okay, the winner of that series will play the Boston Celtics. I'll predict Boston against either one of those teams, and then obviously some of the series that we have said already, such as Denver and the Minnesota Timberwolves. And at the end of today's show, normally a show in early May, I predict the second round and I leave. Well, not today. Tomorrow is May the 4th. May the 4th be with you. Obviously, Star Wars Day. I got my Star Wars hat. I got a Darth Vader t-shirt, Halloween-esque t-shirt. I'm going to match, and this was actually Barry Grant Jr.'s idea. He'll be stopping by in a little over 10 minutes. It was his idea to look at sports teams, right? And compare, only Star Wars nerds are going to get this, the midichlorian count. Like Jedi and Sith have midichlorian counts that sort of dictate how powerful they are, how strong in the Force that they are. And so I'm like, okay, let's look at certain franchises and where do they stack up as it pertains to midichlorians and what their Jedi or Sith equivalent is in that regard. You will definitely want to stay tuned for that, especially if you're a big Star Wars fan at the end of today's show. Tons of stuff going on. But first, Knicks in 6. Called it from the beginning. I'm very excited to see the New York Knicks play last night. I'm a Warriors fan, so I have no dog in this fight, to a certain degree. But the New York Knicks closed out the Philadelphia 76ers 118-115. Fun fact, this series was decided, if you look at the margin of the two teams, in terms of their points scored, the New York Knicks won this series, if we're just going to keep score over the 6 games, by 1 point. That's how close. It was as close as the series can humanly be, certainly for a long series that goes 6 games. Jalen Brunson was simply phenomenal. You look at his numbers last night, Jalen Brunson dropped 41 and 12. He becomes the first player, rather the 5th player in NBA history who over the course of a 4-game stretch averages, I believe, a 40-point double-double or something of that nature. The only other guys to be able to do that are Russell Westbrook, who we know is kind of the triple-double king, and then some guys you may know, LeBron James, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Jalen Brunson joins that club. In the last 4 games, he's averaged 41 and 10 on 49% from the field and about 35.5% from three-point range. And I was thinking about the Knicks today, and really last night, watching that game play out, watching really these playoffs play out. And I'm thinking, okay, Phoenix is eliminated. Lakers are knocked out. Clippers, newsflash, they're getting knocked out tonight by the Dallas Mavericks. More on that later in the show. Golden State didn't make it. Okay, looking around, some of these teams that, in theory, seem to be well-constructed either didn't get to the playoffs or got bounced quickly from the playoffs. I'm thinking about it. And the New York Knicks have been able to do something under Tom Thibodeau, who I've been critical of as a coach. I still, and I think it's going to cost them later in the playoffs, probably either against Indiana or Boston in the Eastern Conference playoffs. The playing your starters darn near the entire basketball game. I'm sorry. Humans aren't robots. There's only so far we can go. Now, Jalen Brunson is looking like a robot right now over the last 4 games. He's been simply sensational. But Tom Thibodeau's been able to do something. The Knicks have been able to do something. Leon Rose, their GM, who's done a fantastic job of putting this roster together to win this playoff series, 2nd year in a row that the Knicks have won a playoff series. They have not done that since 1999 and 2000. Is that they have a set culture and identity, and they're going to put the pieces around it. Jalen Brunson's obviously the cornerstone. He is the key piece. This Knicks team maybe gets to the play-in tournament. I mean, heck, Atlanta got to the play-in tournament. They were terrible, okay? Chicago had injuries. The Knicks will probably get to the play-in tournament without Jalen Brunson. They're nowhere near the 2 seed and winning 50 games without Jalen Brunson. I was thinking about how he's put this roster together, like Villanova guys, Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Josh Hart, but also glue guys, effort guys, OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, guys like that. Dudes to sort of fill out the roster. McBride, who's an excellent shooter, kind of is able to, guys like, again, McBride, Hart, who made the game-winning three last night, DiVincenzo made the game winner back in game 2, and Brunson's been fantastic throughout. Guys who fit the modern game with how they play, shooting, ball handling, but bringing an old school type of feel, a 1990s where, let's just put it this way, the league was somewhat offensively challenged. If you look at the final scores of those games, heck, and just watch the games as well. They weren't great. A mix of the 90s and a mix of the 2010s, 2020s. And that's what you have the New York Knicks. You have a well-coached basketball team that I thought really gave that game away in Game 6. Obviously, Tyrese Maxey scored 7 points in 17 seconds just to get to overtime to win that game and for us to be even talking about a Game 6. The Knicks executed that last stretch poorly. But where was this series won? In a series where the New York Knicks, if you combine the scores of all 6 games, the New York Knicks won by a single point. I mean, the margin of victory as far as the series is concerned, 4-2, Knicks, was actually larger, double that of what the series was as it pertains to combining the final scores of all 6 games. It's kind of mind-boggling. It's one of those weird Ripley's Believe It or Not stats. You put a roster together, combines the old school and the new school, and also develops a set culture. Suns did not have anything that even tried to resemble a culture. They had a really talented superstar in Kevin Durant, a really talented star or superstar in D-Book, a really talented but aging Devin Booker, and a soft big in Nurkic, and that's about it. No culture whatsoever. Monty Williams, who said that, they fired him, and they traded the other guy who set that culture, Chris Paul. The Suns don't know what they're doing. The Los Angeles Lakers, who we'll be talking about in about 10 minutes, have an awesome player in LeBron James, an awesome player in Anthony Davis, pretty good role players around them, and a front office that is not incompetent the way the Phoenix Suns front office is, but seems a bit lost and has really throughout LeBron's tenure in Los Angeles. The Golden State Warriors, who I thought made some good moves this past offseason, moving on from Jordan Poole, finally, but not moving Klay Thompson, which at times I implored them to do, not getting Steph a secondary scorer. The Knicks knew what they were, knew what they lacked. I mean, Julius Randle hasn't been available since January, won't be available for obviously the remainder of the Knicks postseason run. But does he really fit this at all? I mean, he's talented. He's an all-star level player, made the all-star game this year, but is he the type of guy to fit what the Knicks are trying to do on both ends of the floor? No, actually comes up quite small in the postseason, similar to Joel Embiid, who I'll get to in a few minutes. But this series was about effort plays. The end of game 2, effort. Constantly loose balls, playing harder than Philadelphia, out-rebounding Joel Embiid, being able to stop Tobias Harris, who did nothing. Go Vols, but the guy did nothing last night. Kyle Lowry, who I'll give him somewhat of a pass because he's up there in age. Not everybody can be LeBron James or Steph Curry, but awful effort on the defensive end, making big shots on the offensive end. It does remind you to a certain degree a little bit of Villanova, Jay Wright, some of those coach teams. It reminds you some of those Kansas teams with Bill Self. It certainly reminds you, without the incredible size, of the defending back-to-back national champion UConn Huskies, where you got your star. Jalen Brunson's a star. I'm not quite ready to call him a superstar yet, although I'm close. Not quite yet. I think that superstar, that's a whole different bar. But then you fill in the pieces around him in the culture that fits the the star in Brunson and the coach, Tom Thibodeau. Again, I still don't love the way Tom Thibodeau manages rotations, but I can't criticize it right now. They won 50 games, got the 2 seed, and beat, to me, a more talented and still well-coached, I believe, Philadelphia 76ers team. So congrats to the Knicks. I've bought into them all season long as a legitimate championship contender, and today they certainly look that way. The series against the Indiana Pacers, I'll predict that series as well as the other ones and potential ones at the end of the show. Shifting now, though, to Philadelphia, and I've been on this for a couple of years, and certainly in this series. I feel like I am on an island with this opinion that is completely backed up by data, facts, evidence, and eye test. However you want to judge that last one. Is that Joel Embiid is, without a question, one of the 10 greatest basketball players on the face of the earth right now. He is one of the most talented One of the 5 most talented players, I believe, on the face of the planet right now. The guy can get his shots down low with ease. He's pretty good on the defensive end, effective enough when healthy, right? More on that in just a second. Excellent basketball player, 2-time scoring champion, and won the NBA MVP a year ago. What is also true is that he's not a reliable playoff performer. When you talk about some of his fourth quarter, some of his playoff history, you think about the fact that in Game 7 came up small against the Toronto Raptors when Kawhi Leonard was seemingly the only superstar on the floor that night in 2019. You think about the fact that he let a Trae Young, Kevin Huerter, Atlanta Hawks team come into Philadelphia in Game 7 in 2021 and beat you in Philly. You also think about the fact that last year against Boston, Jason Tatum is a literal no-show for 3 quarters. The door's wide open for you to close out the Celtics, and you and your co-star James Harden gag in the fourth quarter. Tatum goes berserk and drops 50 on your head in Game 7. Joel Embiid, only MVP in the history of the NBA, over 75-year history of the NBA, to have never been to a conference finals. He's only one of 3 MVPs to have never been to the NBA finals. The only other 2 are Steve Nash and Derrick Rose. And Embiid, with all due respect to those 2, to me, more talented basketball player. No conference finals appearances. The one thing I've heard as it pertains to Joel Embiid, and as it pertains to his health in this series, the knee issues, the injury he suffered back in January, and then the Woj reported last week, Bell's palsy, which after you got that report, you look at the right side of his face, and it's kind of like his eyelid sort of droops a little bit. Like it's rough. And the one thing I've been consistent on all series long, kudos and then some to Joel Embiid for his toughness and playing through injuries throughout his whole career, throughout his whole playoff career. The guy's always played through injuries to his fingers, to his knees, to his face. To his face, as it pertains to not even having an injury, but a situation with his face. What is also true is that we simply do not give Joel Embiid the same energy when he does come up small like he did in this series and did last night that we give other superstar players even when they're hurt. As a guy who's a big Steph Curry fan, massive Warriors fan, I can tell you directly from sources, Steph Curry, everybody knows he was injured in 2016, got crushed for that finals performance, particularly in Game 7 against the Cavs that year, as he should. 2018, Steph was beat up. He was beat up the next year. He's beat up the last finals run in 2022. But if Steph Curry came up short, nobody's giving him a pass. And I know for a fact, that he was injured in all 3 of those playoff runs. And in 2 of those 3, he came away with championships. Joel Embiid, well, he's injured, Bryson. First quarter, you look at the first quarter stats in the 6 games he played the series. He averaged 9 points, 4.5 rebounds, shot 45% from the field. It's pretty good. As a matter of fact, that's really good. Second quarter, averaged 5 points, 2 rebounds, again, 45.5% from the field. Third quarter, you'd think, the narrative as well, the reason Embiid doesn't come up big in the fourth quarter, he's worn down by that point. I'm looking at his third quarter stats. Can't tell. He goes from 5 points per second quarter to 11.5 points per third quarter on 55% shooting. Those numbers plummet to 6.5 points on 26% shooting from the field in the fourth quarter. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Joel Embiid in this series, in the fourth quarter, had 2 games. That happened to be the first 2 games of the series. He did not have a single, at 7 feet 2 inches tall, fourth quarter rebound. 3 of the other series, he got a rebound, 1 single rebound, 1 time. One single rebound 3 times in the series, 0 rebounds twice in this series. Joel Embiid is a fantastic basketball player. There's nobody on this planet who's going to deny that. But the fact remains, he's not a big-time performer in the postseason. Never has been. We'll see if he is, but we criticize LeBron James if he comes up small from time to time, and it is rare, 2011. We criticize Steph Curry when he himself has been injured in some of these playoff runs. Why don't we give the same energy to Joel Embiid? Heck, I thought we gave it to Jokic before he made the run he did a year ago. We don't do it for some reason. Well, he's injured. He's always injured, just like Kawhi Leonard, who we also give heat to. Before we get to our next guest, let's look at the comments here. John Rivera, great overall team, referring to the New York Knicks. Yeah, they're built extremely well. Tom Thibodeau's obviously done a great job, again, setting the culture, doing what he's been able to do. There's no question about that. Shout out to John of the Fan Perspective podcast. And shout out to the individual I'm going to bring on right now. He is the host of the All Even podcast. And let's just put it mildly, a very happy Lakers fan, despite the fact that they just got gentlemen swept. Would you please give a big carving it up welcome to Barry Grant Jr. joining Carving Up Live. Barry, sir, how you doing?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, sir.
Yes. Do I look happy?
You look, by Barry Grant Jr. standards, pretty happy.
I am.
Yes. And why is that? I'll just give you the floor. So Darvin Ham, I'm just going to say it, blah, blah. Darvin Ham was fired today. You had told me, you had been public, that, again, you had sources that were saying he was going to be fired by Friday, by the end of the week, and sure enough, it happens today. Shams Woj, everybody reports it. There's a number of candidates that we'll get to in just a second that the Lakers could potentially bring in. But your thoughts in the aftermath of the Darvin Ham exit from the LA Lakers?
It was the only move to make. Honestly, to be a fan of this team, to know people that are around this team in different circles, the frustration in the organization because of Darvin Ham, the almost mutiny that ended up happening with the players because they refused to listen to him anymore. I mean, you can really see it visibly during the games. Players are tuned out in the timeout huddles. Even in that game 5, Austin Reeves was very, very visibly frustrated getting taken out of the game. And he only played 34 minutes in an elimination game where Anthony Davis couldn't shoot the ball in the second half. And if you played Austin Rivers another 5 to 6 minutes, I would be fair to say that the Lakers win that game and go back to LA, right? So it's these things that have been just paramount throughout the 2 years of his tenure. Him losing the press conferences all the time, being on the defensive, calling guys out now. Like it was just too much, man. It's too much to the fact that he had to go. I knew he had to go from 5 games into year 1. And not only that he's gone, but the entire coaching staff is gone as well. So, it's very, very sad that everybody, obviously people, losing their jobs, but, they had to clean house and it's time to be able to start fresh.
Yeah, and you criticize the rotation and what someone could come back with that, say, well, there's a lot of coaches who haven't had the greatest rotations in the world. There's been criticism from Warriors fans towards Steve Kerr, but Steve Kerr saying, I think he got this from Greg Popovich, that 90%, being an NBA coach is very different from being an NFL coach or even a baseball manager, is that 90% of it is managing personalities. 90% of it is not losing the locker room, having guys ready to go. And the fact of the matter is Darvin Ham was not that. I mean, I saw this. This is a quote from Darvin Ham I sent to you. This is from Dave McMenamin. It's wild. If you're coaching, it's from Darvin Ham. If you're coaching a team and one of your starters is like 10 games in a row, just bleeping the bed, what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. Maybe
coach. Maybe coach.
Yeah, it's a possibility. Like again, you were all over this. I followed you. Again, I used a game against my Warriors, and the Lakers won this game. But I remember game 1 of the second round series a year ago when the Lakers were out playing the Warriors throughout. And all of a sudden, Steph, Clay, even Jordan Poole start to go berserk from 3. And just Darvin Ham classic sort of, and Bryce James made fun of it. Hands in his pockets, just letting it play out, almost letting that game completely slip away, and who knows, maybe the series. And that was kind of the main thing with Darvin. Now, there's another number of potential candidates for the Lakers. Kenny Atkinson, JJ Redick, again, who may not have obviously have a coaching experience. Ty Lue's been suggested, although I did read a report saying that the Clippers are trying to work on an extension. I'd imagine after the Darvin Ham news.
I'll tell you more. I want you to finish, but I'll tell you what that's about. But go ahead.
Okay, well, listen. So as far as potential candidates, I've suggested Phil Handy. I think the other day you may or may not have thrown out like maybe getting Monty Williams for the Detroit Pistons. Who would be the most okay, let me put it this way. Assuming LeBron stays in LA, and there's a pretty good chance that happens, who's the best fit for this Lakers team among those candidates?
Ty Lue.
Well, yeah, okay. I agree with you.
Ty Lue is the number 1 candidate. Obviously, JJ Redick, just because of the ties And the concerns are is that he's a first year coach and has never been in the system before. Those things are concerns, obviously. A guy like Kenny Atkinson, I think, is a guy that he's had some history in regards to negative history with the Brooklyn Nets. There was some stuff that was there, and he went to Golden State and kind of cleaned up his image as well. So those guys, I would say, there's rumors about Budenholzer and no, you don't want the guy that, you don't want the guy that Darvin Ham learned from. Coaching trees, Sam Cassell, you don't want that guy either because he learned from Doc. So this is just they're going to cast a very wide net. I don't know who should be the front runner in regards to them, how they look at things. I know who I would hire, but the Lakers are completely different. And it's one thing about what I've said in my Lakers rant, and people that want to go check that out, they can go to my page. The front office needs to be questioned as well. I'm a Laker fan. Listen, I'm gonna tell you straight up. I don't trust Rob Pelinka when it comes to hiring head coaches because he's done a poor job doing so. If you look at the history, we have Vogel. We have, Vogel was fine, but the reason why Vogel got the job is because he wanted to put restrictor plates on Ty Lue. So, Vogel steps in, win a championship. He wasn't in love with Vogel, and we seen what happened with that. The disrespect that Vogel got, at the end of his tenure with the Lakers. Darvin Ham, a guy that has some Laker ties, that's why they kind of hired him. He was supposed to be the accountability coach. How did that work out? So I really don't trust Rob Pelinka to be able to be the one to do this. And the question that I posted on X was, how many head coaches does he get to choose before you start looking at him? So yeah, I would definitely say Ty Lue is the front runner. But here's the funny part: Woj is hilarious. Woj is the I don't know if you've noticed this, but he's definitely the Clippers messenger boy. In certain situations, because even how he worded Darvin Ham's dismissal, right? Oh, he's the last head coach for the Lakers to have a winning record. The other one was Phil Jackson. Darvin Ham is going to have many suitors. No, he won't.
You think Woj's making that up?
Yeah, at least not in this cycle, he won't. So the Lakers now, whoever leaked this information that the Lakers are eyeing Ty Lue, all of a sudden Woj comes out and says the Clippers they're steadfast and hell bent on signing an extension with Ty Lue. Why didn't we hear about this a couple of weeks ago? It's very funny that this comes out now because of all the speculation that's going out. So, it's really going to be a game of cat and mouse of what's going on. But what a lot of people don't realize about what's going on with Ty Lue, if the Clippers lose, when the Clippers lose, it's up to Ty Lue if he wants to go or not. If he goes to Clippers management and says, I'm done, I want out, you have no choice but to give him his release.
Sure.
And if he wants to go somewhere else, you can't stop him. No amount of money is going to make him stay. He's made a lot of money in the league in regards to a head coach. He's won a championship. So it's up to Ty Lue about what he wants to do. So we'll see how this cat and mouse game plays out, man. But it's really, really interesting.
Couple of quick questions before we get out of here, because I know we have you in limited time, and I greatly appreciate you coming on because the Darvin Ham news happened, and I was like, okay, I need to get Barry's reaction on the show tonight. I feel like I am, as it pertains to the media coverage of this whole story leading up to it, because it did, as time went on, kind of feel inevitable. I feel like I'm in the twilight zone to a level, Barry, where I didn't know Darvin Ham had so many allies. And listen, not that I don't dislike Darvin Ham as a person, but as a matter of fact, let me walk that back. I don't think necessarily Darvin Ham has any allies. I think that they're still, call me crazy, you may agree, you may disagree, but a bit of a anti-LeBron sentiment, like, oh, he got 100%. Another coach fired, and people equating it to Vogel. Vogel to me was a scapegoat for a bad Westbrook experiment.
Yes, he was.
That to me, I always defended Vogt. I never thought he was a perfect coach, but the guy was good in Indiana. Orlando was a tough spot. And he did win a championship. Darvin Ham, you talk about, not prime LeBron, but still 25, 8, and 7 on 50% from the field, 40 from 3 LeBron. And I think the best season Anthony Davis has ever had. I don't.
Yes.
I'm this close, Barry, to retiring Coin Flip Davis. I may have to get that out of here.
He was excellent, man. And I even give him kudos for playing through that game on a bad shoulder. I really do.
Yeah. So just your thoughts on the media coverage. I know, and people I respect, Charles Barkley, Colin Cowherd, Chris Broussard, like defending. I'm like, I don't know if you watch some of these series, the rotations aren't good. Like you mentioned earlier, the body language is terrible by players, which to me is an indictment on the coach. Your thoughts on this?
I mean, yeah, it's not even something that we have to even speak about, right, Bryson? It's there. When Coach Bud was on the hot seat in Milwaukee, and everybody knew that if they didn't win a championship, he was getting fired. You didn't really hear any outrage when he got fired in Milwaukee, did you? Nothing. He got fired, parted ways, and that was it. But it's always about, well, even Pat McAfee, and respect to Pat McAfee, I respect his show, but he's like, oh, well, if you don't win, you get fired. No, that's not the case. It's about if you're not competent to do the job effectively, you will leave. See, the thing is, a lot of people don't realize about great players. Great players need somebody who they respect as a great mind as well. LeBron James is one of he's probably has the highest basketball IQ we've ever seen in basketball. So could you imagine being a guy with that level of IQ on the court and have a head coach that doesn't match you with that? It's very difficult to play with. When you have other guys that have high basketball IQs and you have a head coach that doesn't match you with that, it's extremely frustrating. It's like working at a job where your supervisor is an idiot. It's very hard to kind of go through your job every day, knowing that you know more than your supervisor, right? So it's something, they have to understand that you got to pick somebody that veteran players or a great player like LeBron is going to respect. Magic Johnson went through it. He fired coaches, and he had to get somebody that he respected. And when he respected that person, they stuck around a while, didn't they?
Yeah.
So that's just the tenure. That's just the situation. But we always know the narrative that's around LeBron James. Other people do it. We don't hear from it. LeBron James, quote unquote, does it, or it happens in his situation, and all of a sudden the blame goes to him. Everything. It's just par for the course, man. So
would have been nice if he had Phil Jackson, right? Just throwing that out there. Anywho, that's beside the point. Quickly, and I'll get to my last question. Super quick. Who's your favorite to win the championship now?
Oh man, I think Denver is still listen. They're the defending champs. They beat the Lakers in 5 games. It was another tough series, but you can't really count Denver out until somebody beats them. They're the favorite. Like that's just how I look at it. They have the best player on planet Earth. They have good role players. They have a coach that understands how to get the best out of his players. His fourth quarter execution, his second half adjustments have been really, really good. So until somebody proves that they can beat Denver, it's Denver. I don't care how good Boston looks. I don't care. The Timberwolves, okay, they match up stylistically with the Denver Nuggets and size-wise, but we got to see it, right? And it's still Denver to me.
I agree with you. Last question, and I mentioned at the start of the show to sort of preview it. It was your idea to come up with the Star Wars segment at the end of the show, so I really appreciate that. Your opinion. So I'm doing it based off teams. I'm just doing teams and sports. So baseball, football, basketball. Which team? And this is for my Star Wars fans out there. You're a massive one. Which team should have the highest midichlorian count in your opinion, Barry Grant?
So we're talking about all sports right now.
All sports.
Got to be the Chiefs.
Oh, okay. I like that. I will tell you that they're high, not the highest.
Okay.
Put it that way. So I'll just a little preview. But nonetheless, Barry Grant Jr. shown up on, for a few minutes to discuss Darvin Ham and a number of other issues. Check out the All Even podcast. You got a new show coming soon, right?
Oh, it's going to get crazy tonight. Trust me.
Oh, boy.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Shout out to Barry. Shout out to the All Even podcast. Shout out to the co-founder and the creator of the 8 o'clock spot on the Grid Network. Barry, appreciate you coming on short notice, my man.
Yes, sir.
Barry Grant Jr., All Even podcast. Great stuff as always. Hey, listen, he's 100% right about as far as the overall weird sentiment about Darvin Ham. Obviously, you talk about, the anti-LeBron stuff is a real thing. You talk about the criticism or a criticism for Bud that we don't get for Darvin Ham, even though, as he sort of referenced, they're kind of the same guy. I mean, Darvin Ham was literally on Bud's staff when the Bucks won the championship a couple of years ago. And by the way, I criticized Budenholzer at length during that championship run for Milwaukee. I mean, I remember vividly when, Milwaukee swept the Heat in the first round series. The only guy, remember that they were in that tough series against Brooklyn? Remember the Kevin Durant toenail game in Game 7? When KD is killing them, is the only guy that can kill them over the course of a 7-game series, and by a literal inch, they survive Game 7. If KD's foot is an inch behind the three-point line or an inch further back, the Nets win that series on a walk-off shot by Durant, rather than the Bucks winning in overtime. Then the Eastern Conference Finals, before Trae Young gets hurt, he's going crazy on you. And so it was just a weird, again, lack of adjustments, lack of making changes on the fly. And that's something that Darvin Ham is a student of. And so he did mention Budenholzer. I cannot imagine Mike Budenholzer's the hire. There's no way. That to me would be the worst one. Is, JJ Redick, I get he's never coached, but he's got a relationship with LeBron. He has a very high basketball IQ. So do Kenny Atkinson. I like Kenny more of as a developmental guy, and that's not just because I'm trying to keep him on the Warriors staff, because I think he's a really good coach. Ty Lue to me would be absolutely the best hire. But yeah, John Rivera, Ham not coaching this year. There's no way. And he listen, if Woj is BS, I don't think he is. But man, that would be crazy. Anywho's it. Let's transition though to, because I was going to discuss Darvin Ham, but I'm on, Barry's a Lakers fan, is the ultimate Darvin Ham critic. So I'm like, I want to get his thoughts on it as well. I'm with him. The Lakers absolutely made the right decision. Transitioning now though to the other series that ended last night. So I picked the Knicks in 6, which predictions for the Knicks and Pacers series later. The Pacers 1-6 over Milwaukee, which I also predicted, Pacers in 6. Now, I predicted that series in 6. If Giannis played all 6 games, if Dame played all 6 games, obviously Giannis never took the court one time. Damian Lillard played, I guess, 4 of the 6 games. Yeah, 4, because he played through Game 3, missed games 4 and 5, and then obviously played last night. So here's the thing. Bucks fans have gotten mad about me on this, about this whole Giannis is going to leave Milwaukee thing. I still believe it to be true. I don't have it sourced. I don't have anybody that's telling me anything. So this is no insider information. I think Giannis is going to ask out of Milwaukee this offseason, because you got to remember this. Giannis was already very irritated last offseason. It was an almost repeat of 2020, where if you remember, Giannis, back-to-back MVPs, 1 defensive player of the year, and then steps up there and essentially says, hey, if the Bucks aren't going to put the pieces around me, I'm going to leave in free agency. Well, what do the Bucks do? They trade for Drew Holiday, Giannis signs an extension, and months later, they're NBA champions. Last year, he does the same thing. Bucks get knocked out in round 1. He says, hey, if almost verbatim, if the organization does not put a roster around that shows that we're looking to compete for a championship, then I guess I'm going to have to move on. And what do? They trade for Damian Lillard. Now, they moved Drew Holiday, which was, you see what Drew Holiday's doing. Drew Holiday's always been one of my favorite players in the league. I love what he brings to the table on both ends, particularly defensively. And he's been excellent for Boston. He's been the key for the Boston Celtics' success this year. It's the reason I had them winning the Eastern Conference coming into the year. The fit didn't work. The pick and roll with Giannis and Dame didn't work. They fire Adrian Griffin because there were locker room issues. They bring in Doc. The team's far worse, awful on the defensive end, or a little better than they were under Griffin. Not great in the offensive end. It was just kind of a clunky mess. Doc Rivers finishes his career under 500. It was brief, it appears, stint with the Milwaukee Bucks under 500, and the Bucks are in disarray. Here's my question: why would Giannis stay? Giannis is 29 years of age. I believe he'll be 30 when next season begins. What is Giannis Antetokounmpo's incentive to stay? Because if Giannis had never won a championship with the Bucks, there is that. It's the reason LeBron went back to Cleveland, which I thought was the wrong move. I thought he should have stayed in Miami, would have won more championships. That's neither here nor there. There's a lot of times a lot of guilt, especially for small market teams, when you go to a franchise and you feel like after a while, like it's just probably not going to work. We're probably not going to win a championship. I kind of feel bad about leaving, but I also see that the grass really is greener in some of these other pastures. Giannis already got his championship. When the Milwaukee Bucks, and he was a late first-round pick in 2013. When the Bucks took him in late 2013, if you told him, hey, this kid is going to win 2 MVPs, a Defensive Player of the Year, be the best player you've ever had by far outside of since Kareem and Oscar in the 70s, and you're going to win an NBA championship in the heart of his prime. Of course they would have taken it. It's Milwaukee. Milwaukee's not a poorly run franchise historically, but you think about the all-time great NBA franchises, Milwaukee probably doesn't crack the top. They don't crack the top 10. They crack the top 15? I don't really think they do. They're kind of that bottom half of organizations in the NBA historically. Certainly as it pertains to playoff success over the course of the last half century, Giannis was able to break through and get that title. But Giannis looks around him right now with the Milwaukee Bucks, and he says, okay, Damian Lillard is still great. And by the way, for the record, I'm the biggest Dame fan in the world. But he is getting older. He has a defensive turnstile. He did suffer injuries this year and these playoffs. Chris Middleton, who I thought really, that was the best Chris Middleton I've seen since the 2021 championship. Because as we all know, the Bucks, I thought were going to win the East the next year in 2022, face my Warriors. Middleton went down and it kind of derailed their playoff run. Middleton over the last couple of years has been in and out of the lineup, not totally healthy. I thought Middleton was excellent in this series. He was the last reason the Bucks lost. But Middleton, do I necessarily trust him to be my 2? I get we won a championship with him as my 2, but I also dropped 50 in a game 6 and played one of the greatest finals ever. If Doc stays, we're screwed. If Doc leaves, that's now 4 coaches in 3 years. So now I start to have a little bit of distrust in the front office. Oh, by the way, we have the oldest or second oldest roster in all of basketball to the LA Clippers. Bobby Portis is getting older. Dame's getting older. I mean, it's an old roster in Milwaukee. Beasley, it's not Michael Beasley. Oh shoot, I'm forgetting the guy's name. I think his name's Beasley. Anyways, getting up there in age. What's Giannis's incentive to stay, especially when you consider, well, I don't know, he's, in my view, one of the 3 best players on planet Earth and will have nothing but suitors. I still say, and especially at the Knicks won this series, my Lord, would the pick and roll with Giannis Antetokounmpo and Jalen Brunson not be darn near unstoppable? I mean, come on. So I think the Knicks would be the most likely destination. I'm still sort of holding out hope. Giannis has been indirectly linked to the Warriors. It feels like for 5 years now. I would love to see him come to Golden State. That would be awesome. It would revamp the championship dynasty aspirations for my Warriors. Don't think that's totally likely, but we'll see. Crazier things have happened. I think the Warriors would be a great fit. The Knicks would be an amazing fit. There's plenty of teams out there that they could use a player like Giannis, like, I don't know, the entire league, when you have a guy of that caliber who could do what he could do on both sides of the floor. And this is what happens. Listen, those that say, well, Giannis can't leave because he's the reason Dame's there. Yeah, because he's a superstar in a small market. You do cape to their demands and wishes. If Giannis were with the Lakers or the Celtics or, well, the Knicks, they probably would because they haven't won in 50 years. But the Heat, Miami Heat, if Giannis with the Heat, they don't have to cape to his every demand. So they're like, hey, we probably won't get a player as good as you because Giannis is one of the greatest players of all time. But we can get another superstar. We've gotten it before. Dwayne Wade and LeBron and Jimmy's been great. Giannis, the Lakers have had God knows how many superstars. Same can be said about the Boston Celtics. They can get another one. Milwaukee's not getting another one. Oklahoma City, you saw they reacted when KD left. You know why they reacted that way? Because they're not getting another Kevin Durant. Love Shea. Shea is not as good as KD was in his prime. Although maybe we'll see. He may get there. But even if Shea at the Thunder maybe don't reach expectations over the next half decade, and he looks around, maybe they can't get another star next to him. I'm not saying that's really the case because I love Oklahoma City's future, but just theoretically, Shea could force their hand. It's what LeBron tried to do in Cleveland. They wouldn't, so LeBron said, okay, I'm leaving. Miami wants me. Miami gives me a co-star. Miami gives me a great coach. Y'all won't. Giannis will be thinking the same thing in my estimation. He knows what the market is going to be for him. He knows the fact that the contract he signed, if you look at the way it's structured, he can leave in short order. He looks at the fact that the Bucks are a very old roster and very poorly coached. And even if they get a good coach, that's 4 in 3 years. That's not great, and it's unstable. So I think he leaves. As far as the other story with the Milwaukee Bucks, because I would be remiss if I didn't touch on this. So, Patrick Beverley. Patrick Beverley is what people think Draymond Green is. Not that talented. Really, really, really dirty. Not terribly valuable to a team that's trying to win. And kind of a jerk. That's how a lot of folks say Draymond Green. Some of those adjectives could be Draymond made the dirty play on Nurkic, the Gobert thing I defended because he was defending Klay Thompson. Different story for a different show. I've done clips on that in the past. They're on YouTube. Patrick Beverley last night. The Bucks were getting crushed in Game 6. Pacers were well on their way to advancing. And he was on the sideline in Indiana. And a fan yelled something at him. Now, initially, I'm hesitant to comment on this situation on this show, or I would have been on this show or on social media. I was hesitant because I'm like, okay, did the fan, God forbid, say something like a racial slur, or did they to take a shot at his family? No. That's what he said. Cancun on 3. Referencing what Patrick Beverley ironically said to his teammate, who probably won't be his teammate for much longer, Damian Lillard, back in 2020 during the bubble. So the fan, kudos to the fan, turned Pat Bev's own phrase onto him. I don't love heckling, but that was, I wouldn't say justified. It was within his right to say that. He didn't call, nothing racial. 1, 2, 3, Cancun. Patrick Beverley's response to this is to take a basketball and throw it at the guy and his wife. I assume that's his wife, girlfriend. It hits the girlfriend or wife. They throw it back. Patrick apologizes to her and throws it back at the guy. Not to mention, in the area, we don't have the video for this, but there was a little girl very close by. So Patrick Beverley was a few inches away, an off toss, which Patrick Beverley gets paid to play basketball, which he doesn't do that well. He doesn't get paid to throw a basketball. Could have hit her, which Patrick Beverley might be banned for the NBA for all of next year if that happened. And then it gets worse. As bad as that was. After the game, he's asked, I want to get the reporter's name correctly because she deserves a ton of credit. Melinda Adams of ESPN. Melinda Adams, who's a journalist, longtime working journalist, works for ESPN. Pat Bev is getting interviewed after the game in the locker room. She asks him a question. He responds with, I'm sorry, wait, hang on a second. Do you subscribe to my podcast? Which, for the record, Patrick, nobody listens to. Do you listen to my podcast? Or subscribe to it? And she said, your podcast? She said, oh, no, I don't subscribe to your podcast. He says, okay, next question. Essentially waves her off. She tries to ask another question. I believe she tried to ask another question or had her mic, did something that's just totally crossed the line. Had her mic, because she's reporting for ESPN, next to him, trying to get sound bites, because that's what her job is. And he says, basically, get the microphone out of my face. You don't subscribe to my podcast. Now, Melinda Adams went on Twitter and said, Patrick called her, apologized, the whole bit. Here's the problem. This guy's amazing. And not in the good way. Patrick Beverley, early in the 2019-20 season. Now, that was the offseason leading up to that. Anthony Davis had gotten traded to the Lakers. And the Clippers have countered with, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to sign Kawhi Leonard, the defending finals MVP. We're going to trade for Paul George, put our own star duo together, and put a good roster around them. Patrick Beverley, obviously, was not one of those good players, but he was on the roster. The Clippers, and I remember this game because it's the first game, again, as a Warriors fan, first game in the history of the Chase Center. The Warriors have moved from the historic, great Oracle Arena, first game ever at the Chase Center. And the Clippers come into Golden State. Keep in mind, KD left, Klay was hurt. The Warriors were a shell of what they were at that point and got obliterated by the Clippers. But at one point in that game, Patrick Beverley, who's guarding Steph Curry tells him, you had the last 5 years are yours. You had the last 5 years. The next 5 years are mine. That was his exact quote. Well, since we're on that, let's look at Patrick Beverley's last 5 years. Let's see what he's done. So in 2020, that season, He was a part of a team that had probably the worst, put together the single worst choke job in the history of the NBA playoffs. Blew a 3-1 lead. You're like, Bryson, what about the 2016 Warriors? What about the Thunder that year? What about all these other teams that have blown 3-1 leads in the past? No. This was different. First of all, the Clippers were the favorite to win that series against the Denver Nuggets, who, keep in mind, that was a young Jokic. That was a young Jamal Murray. The Clippers, led by double digits in Game 5, lost. Led by double digits, almost, I think, 20 points, almost 20 points in Game 6, lost. Led by double digits in Game 7, lost badly. So not a great start to Pat Bev's first 5 years of this being his league, so to speak. 2021, he's part of a Clippers team that gets to the Western Conference Finals, and his season concludes with Chris Paul dropping 40 on his head and Patrick Beverley, because he's a sucker, as Chris Paul, towards the end of the game's in hand, Suns are about to go to the NBA Finals, Clippers are about to go home. Chris Paul is walking to his bench during a timeout. Patrick Beverley, because he's a coward, walks behind Chris Paul, shoves him in the back without, again, he didn't come up to Chris Paul, shove him out front, and be straight up about it. Shoves him in the back like the coward that he is. Looks like thank God it wasn't worse than it looked. Almost gave Chris Paul whiplash. Gets suspended to start the following season. That's how year 2 of the Pat Bev era began, or concluded, rather. 2022. He was part of a Minnesota Timberwolves team that eliminated his old team, the LA Clippers, and he was weeping after that game. Celebrated like he won the championship. It's the Aloe Black song, I'm the Man, the meme that comes from that. Patrick Beverley, that was your big moment, and you got knocked out in round 1. And in 2023, year 4 of the Pat Bev era, you got traded and you missed the playoffs. And this year, you're with the Milwaukee Bucks. You got traded because Philly didn't want you anymore. Milwaukee played you because they had to, because they were missing a bunch of injured players. And your season ends with you throwing a basketball, almost hitting a little girl, hitting a woman, and then hitting her husband or her boyfriend. Oh, and then, by the way, being a complete sexist in the locker room. That concludes the Pat Bev era of the last 5 years. He should be suspended for 10 games minimum to start this upcoming season. Keep in mind the fact that he dove into Russell Westbrook's knee in the 2013 playoffs and screwed up what could have been, who knows, maybe another run to the finals for Oklahoma City that season. Keep in mind the fact that he, again, as I mentioned, shoved Chris Paul in the back, nearly gave the man whiplash. Keep in mind the fact that he threw a basketball at fans for saying Cancun on 3. So he's soft, a coward, a misogynist, and for the record, not that good at basketball. Patrick Beverley is who people think Draymond Green is. Draymond Green, who, he's the worst guy, Yeah, the Warriors dislike Draymond Green so much, he spent his entire 12-year career there. And won 4 championships, a defensive player of the year, and guys like Steph Curry and Steve Kerr swear by him. They got irritated with him at the end of the season, and I completely defended them. But over the course of his career, Draymond has been the catalyst to a dynasty. Patrick Beverley is an irrelevant basketball player who's been traded God knows how many times and is a coward. And he showed you that last night. To the comments. Phil. Patrick Beverley's an absolute clown. He's worse than Dillon Brooks. You know what? I have been critical of Dillon Brooks. The guy's gotten on my last nerves. You may not be wrong about that, Philip, because, again, Dillon Brooks hasn't been in the league as long as Patrick Beverley, although that may change very soon. You're probably right about that, because, again, Dillon Brooks, I think, is a dirty player. I think Dillon Brooks is a corny player, and is not a guy you want to have on your team if you want to compete for anything close to a championship. I think the Houston Rockets are going to do special things in the future, and it's darn sure not going to be because of Dillon Brooks. I think they need to move on from him. They gave him a terrible contract. Patrick Beverley's had more of a history of dirty plays, and there you go. And Philip said, and we know how bad Dillon Brooks is, but that speaks about volumes about Pat Bev. He is. But you said it, Philip. He's an absolute clown. That's exactly what he is. Come on, man. Primo 1973. Chris Paul talks a lot of junk. He deserved that push. Now he has the laughing emoji. Listen, Chris Paul has a history himself of crossing the line. He does. He really does. But, man, that is the definition of a punk move. You're getting your absolute arse handed to you by Chris Paul. The only reason the Suns won that game, which I know they blew the Clippers out in Game 6 3 years ago, but Chris Paul is just giving it to Patrick Beverley. And his response is to come up from behind him. See, he didn't come up to Chris Paul, to his face like a man. And so if you're going to fight Chris Paul, it's a dopey move. It's a stupid move. At least go to his face. You shove him in the back. You throw a basketball at two fans, almost hit a little girl. Like you're as disrespectful as you can possibly be to a reporter because she doesn't subscribe to your garbage podcast. That's like some guts right there. And by the way, for the record, again, her name, Melinda Adams is the woman's name, the reporter. She works for ESPN. ESPN, and kudos to them, by the way, for doing this, has banned Patrick Beverley from all future appearances. So that tells me that he was probably going to be on, because he was on playoff coverage. I don't know if he was on there a year ago. He was doing playoff coverage with ESPN 2 years ago. I remember during the finals and all that. Maybe he was going to this year because of his media presence with his podcast. And ESPN said, nah, we don't want you. It's a shame that we're not going to get the incredible basketball intellect of Patrick Beverley when we're watching the NBA Finals this year. It's a real shame. It really is. Oh, let's say Giannis should leave. That's what I'm saying. And then not because of Patrick Beverley, because Pat Bev's going to be gone from Milwaukee. That's not the reason Giannis should leave, but there you go. Okay. Anything broke recently? Okay. Byron Murphy signed to the Seattle Seahawks. So there you go. I really like the kid. I think he's a really talented guy to Texas. To the Clippers-Dallas Mavericks series, which for the record is going to end tonight. I took Dallas in 5. I thought they matched up better with the Clippers. Luka Doncic historically has destroyed the Clippers. I know he lost the 2 playoff series in 2020 and 2021, but it wasn't because of him. The guy's averaging like a 30-point triple-double on crazy shooting splits. Like, they didn't lose because of Luka. That's number one. But Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavericks up 3 games to 2 in this series. And when it was tied to it is like, again, history often repeats itself. In politics, in sports, in life, history usually repeats itself. And the LA Clippers, it was as the second most predictable thing in these playoffs. The most predictable is the Lakers getting beat quickly by the Denver Nuggets. That was, I could not believe the number of people that were picking the Lakers to win that series, which is why I kind of did a little bit of a troll job to start yesterday's show. The Clippers, though, their collapse, their demise, and how it happened is the most predictable thing in this year's playoffs. So first of all, Kawhi's hurt, because he always is and has been a lot the last 4 years. This is now, they've already ruled him out for Game 6 tonight. And again, played Game 2, re-aggravated the injury, wasn't good in Game 3, hasn't played since. Keep in mind, he played 2 games last year in the first round against Phoenix, missed the rest of the series. 2022, he didn't play at all that year, which is part of the reason why the Clippers missed the playoffs entirely. And 2021, he tore his ACL in the second round. Paul George had to carry the Clippers to the conference finals when Patrick Beverley pushed Chris Paul. So how do we start? Kawhi's down. Russell Westbrook has always been an inefficient player, and I've been a Russ critic. I've tried to pull back on it just a little because I do think some of the Russ criticism over the last 2 to 3 years has really crossed the line in a certain regard. Not so much the Westbrook, but some of the stuff's like really like dial it back a little. It's been a little over the line. Like someone, I think they called him a vampire. Some report called him like a vampire of the Lakers locker room. Like that's too far. Like Russ is liked in locker rooms that he's in. It's just his game that drives me crazy. That's over the years. It's always been the case, even when Russ was in his prime. I don't think it's possible for Russell Westbrook to have played worse in the last 4 basketball games. If we have the stats again, we don't have any graphics today, unfortunately. Okay, since Game 2, Russell Westbrook's averages, and I'm not kidding when I say this, 4 points, 4.8 points, 5 rebounds, 1 assist. His shooting percentage is 16% from the field, 20% from 3. Russell Westbrook could not have been worse in this series. And then we get to James Harden. So, a history repeats itself. The first 4 games of last year against the last year's series when James was in Philly against the Boston Celtics, James was playing about as well as we've ever seen him play in the playoffs. At one point, he had 2 40-point games in Games 1 and Game 4 and hit the game-winning shot in both. I'm pretty sure he hit it in game 1. I'm certain he hit it in game 4. From game 5 on, he averaged like 13 points a game on horrendous shooting splits. And I said after game 4, when Harden was brilliant, hitting floater after floater, really him along with the brilliance of Paul George. Paul, come to the Warriors next year. Was great. Led the Clippers, prevented what would have been an absolute choke job in game 4, blowing a 30-plus point lead to Dallas. But I said, the game is coming. A James Harden choke job game, whatever you want to call it, it is coming. And he was absolutely awful. James Harden, if we can pull up the stats here, James Harden against the Dallas Mavericks scored a grand total, and it wasn't that grand, of 7 points. 7 points for James Harden with 4 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 for 12 from the field, 1 for 7 from three-point range. James Harden in his last 5 game 5s has posted averages of 11 points on 29% from the field, 20% from three-point range. It gets worse. James Harden, he has 10 playoff games with 2 or fewer makes in his career. 10 games in his playoff career, he's had games where he's made 2 or less shots. He's had 17 games with 3 or fewer shots made in the postseason. He's had 23 playoff games with more shot attempts than makes. He's had more games where he shot the basketball more shot attempts than makes. Or not shot attempts than, I'm sorry. More attempts, because obviously you have more attempts than makes, of course. You can't go 100% for the field. My bad. More attempts than points. So think about that. We talk about inefficiency and more attempts than points. James Harden has done that 23 playoff games. And he's had 3 straight playoff series where at least one of the games he scored in the single digits. I've criticized Aaron Rodgers for coming up small in the playoffs, Embiid. I've never seen anything like this in my life. Now, Harden's not prime Harden anymore. We get that. But he was doing this at his peak. You think about 2017, Game 6 against the San Antonio Spurs. James Harden, I believe, did he score double digits in that game? And the Rockets got obliterated by the Spurs. Lost by like 40 points. Kawhi Leonard didn't even play in that game. The game was in Houston. 2018 led a Rockets team that missed the most consecutive three-pointers in NBA history in a game that my Warriors won by 9. 2021, I believe he scored 7, something like that in game 7. It was close. It was somewhere in the single digits, somewhere close to single digits in game 7. Last year was awful in game 6 and game 7 against Boston, and this year it's the same thing. Now, Paul George has not been good himself. Paul George only scored 15 points, was not good at all in that game. The only reason I defend Paul George is because, A, contrary to popular belief, this is not his playoff history. 2018, he was terrible against the Utah Jazz in that series. 2020, when the Clippers choked that 3-1 lead to Denver, he was awful. Remember the iconic, well, not iconic, but the infamous side of the backboard shot in Game 7? Like, he was awful. But he's also taken the Indiana Pacers to the conference finals twice, early into his career. Took the LeBron James, Dwayne Wade-led Heatles 7 games in 2013. I believe he took them 6 games in 2014. The only conference finals that the low-life, bad organization that historically is called the Los Angeles Clippers, only player to lead him to a conference finals, his name is Paul George. So again, Harden does this. Westbrook doesn't do this, but historically Russell's not very good in the playoffs, as far as the shooting splits. Paul George, not necessarily the case if you look historically. He's had some impressive playoff runs. He's been to 3 conference finals. Is Paul George going to be the best player ever at any point in his career on a championship-winning team? Absolutely not. Can he be the number 2? Well, if your number 1 is reliable, which Kawhi has really not been the last 5 years, sure. That's why I think he'd be a perfect fit in Golden State. That's why I think there's other franchises. The Orlando Magic. Now, the problem is Paolo is still I love Paolo, but he's still a little young to lead like a championship run. Although I do still believe that the Magic are going to win this series. I think they win tonight, winning Game 7 on Sunday, and break the hearts of the Cavs fans. But nonetheless, I think that's what's going to be the case But again, get a reliable number one star co-star for Paul George. Because, and again, I'm being hard on Harden as well, because he's been the number one and done this. He's been the number two and done this. It's been consistent. It's one thing we can count on with James Harden in the playoffs is the guy's going to shoot some tour dates. It's what they call it, shooting tour dates, like 2 for 11. He shoots February 11th from the field, or he shoots, April 20th from the field. There you go. But Dallas, by the way, Dallas is going to wrap the series up tonight. I do think the Clippers will put up a better fight than they did in Game 5, because I thought they came out, and I love Ty Lue. I think he's one of the 3 best coaches in the world in the sport of basketball, but I thought they came out lethargic, low energy. I just did not see the same sort of intensity from the Clippers that I did in Dallas. Maybe some of that was a leftover of Game 4, where the Clippers were destroying Dallas. Mavericks came back, took the lead on a crazy Kyrie shot, but then Paul George saved him at the end of the day. Maybe it was a carryover from that. I do think the Clippers will put up a good fight. I'm not saying this is going to be close. I'll say Dallas 115-100. I mean, that's a 15-point lead. That's pretty comfortable. But I think it'll be a fight, a battle, and then Luka and Kyrie will slam the door shut in the end. Luka Doncic, though, again, part of the reason I say it's over tonight as well. Luka Doncic's averages in closeout games, he averages 33, 8, and 9 with 2 steals on 51, 42, 84 shooting splits. So it's over tonight. It is very much over tonight. And by the way, part of the reason, and then I'll move on to my second round predictions. Part of the reason that I did pick Dallas to obviously win the series, but I thought they were the second best team in the Western Conference coming into the playoffs. And I remember before the play-in tournament started, I said Dallas, I think, is the 3rd best team in basketball. Now the Knicks give them a good push for that. You could probably convince me to put the Knicks above them. Obviously, Denver's 1, Boston's 2, at least in my mind. But the thing that's played Dallas over the years, regardless of the co-star that James Harden has had, whether it's Jalen Brunson, Kyrie Irving now, is it's a very slow walk-up, kind of James Harden style, Kobe Bryant. Now, Kobe kind of had to do it, but once Kobe learned to defer, once MJ learned to defer with 2 co-stars, because, again, Luka did have Jalen Brunson. We see what he's doing in New York. He does have Kyrie Irving, who, for all his faults, and to Kyrie's credit, there haven't really been any off-court incidences this year. You do have a good teammates around you. You do have guys you can trust. PJ Washington has been a really good get. So is Daniel Gafford for the Dallas Mavericks. Great lob threat for him. Dallas over the second half of the season, I don't know if it's since the Gafford trade, but, and you give Jason Kidd a lot of credit for this, they're playing much more quick, up-tempo, up and down, play quickly. Luka, you make your decision quick, go. Kyrie, same thing. Rather than walk up, what Charles Barkley said, dribble, 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 dribble. It used to kind of be that way in Dallas. It's not anymore. So I give them credit for that. And it's part of the reason I think they're going to be in the conference finals. I think they're going to give Denver a run for their money if Denver advances. So there you go. All right. I sort of gave a little tease right there as far as playoff predictions, but let's look at potential playoff matchups as well as the ones that are already set. We have 2 series that are locked, set in stone for the second round, 2 that have yet to be decided. Both could be decided as soon as tonight with the Magic and Cavs tonight. Cavs could advance, Magic hoping to force a Game 7, and then the Mavericks hoping to advance, Clippers hoping to force a Game 7. Let's get the background music going on right now. Second round NBA playoff predictions. Here we go. By saying this, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so of the 6 series that have concluded, I'm 5-1 in those series. The only one I got wrong, and I got it badly wrong, was Suns over Timberwolves. Listen, I didn't buy into Phoenix all season long, but I bought into slightly more than the Timberwolves. My bad. I still don't trust Rudy Gobert, but my bad. Only series I've gotten wrong to this point. I'm hoping the Magic come through for me in the next 2 games, and Dallas closes it out tonight. So let's start in the Eastern Conference right now, okay? So the Boston Celtics have already advanced. They would take on either the Cavs, who could advance tonight, or the Magic, who would need to win the next 2 in order to play Boston. I think this will either way be a quick series. Listen, Boston has been awesome on the offensive end all season long. The number 1 team in terms of offensive, I think the number 2 team to the Indiana Pacers in terms of offensive rating, number 1 team in the National Basketball Association as far as, or top 5 in the National Basketball Association in defensive rating. Jason Tatum's had a great season, so is Jaylen Brown, Drew Holiday. Kristaps Porzingis is out. I do think that'll be a bigger loss down the road, depending on when or if Porzingis comes back. I still don't trust Joe Mazzulla in these series. I really don't, but he really hasn't had the opportunity because of the massive, massive talent advantage that he has in his team to get exposed. So I don't think that'll be an issue, a big issue for the Boston Celtics in this upcoming series. Cleveland and Orlando, especially Orlando, very offensively challenged in every way, shape, and form. Again, Cleveland has an experienced scorer in Donovan Mitchell, who I think could get them a game in this series. We do know there was one game this year where the Cavs came back from a huge deficit to beat the Boston Celtics. I'm not sure if Orlando beat them this season or not. As far as I know, Boston took care of them in short order throughout the regular season. Out of respect for Orlando's defense and youth, I would give them a game, but I would obviously take the Boston Celtics to win in 5 games. This is the series I think we're going to get. I think Orlando wins tonight, and I think Orlando wins on the road in Game 7. But again, if they advance, it'll be a quick one. Gentlemen's sweep for the Celtics for the second straight series, as I predicted. If the Cavs advance, I think it's the same result. Celtics win in 5 games over Cleveland. Either way, I think this will be a quick series. 2 really, really talented defensive teams are the Cavaliers and are especially the Magic. But, man, you've got to have more offensive firepower if you want to compete against Boston. They simply don't have that. So, either way, Cavs or Magic, Celtics in 5. Moving on to the series that is set. Indiana Pacers, New York Knicks, a rematch of the 1990 series. Let's pray to God, and I don't think we have to, that this is going to be a higher scoring series than some of those games were back in the late 90s when it was like 72-69 final scores. I do not think we'll be getting this. This Indiana Pacers team is fantastic on the offensive end of the floor. It's part of the reason why I picked them, whether Giannis played or not, to beat the Milwaukee Bucks, because if you look at what the Pacers have done just in this series against Milwaukee, okay? Only scored 94 in Game 1, but as far as their scoring outputs, 125, 121, 126, 92, and then if we have Game 6 for summer, 120 in Game 6. For the Knicks, kind of a different sort of different identity, different vibe, different overall approach in terms of how they go after trying to win basketball games in the NBA playoffs. So Jalen Brunson has had one of the better 4-game stretches that we've seen in NBA playoff history. As I said earlier, he's one of 5 players ever to have a 4-game stretch averaging a 40-point double-double. The other 4 guys, Westbrook, we know about the triple-double, LeBron, Kareem, Giannis. That's what Jalen Brunson's doing right now, having a fantastic run. The Knicks have an established identity of, we're going to be a really good 3-point shooting team when it really matters most. We're going to execute late in games, Game 5 notwithstanding, and we are going to absolutely lock you down defensively. That's going to be our identity throughout the course of this series and throughout the course of our season, depending on how it goes. I think this could be a back-and-forth tug-of-war, similar to how the Knicks-Sixers series was. This is obviously a much tougher matchup for the Indiana Pacers than the Bucks series was. Of course, Jalen Brunson, Dame, it's a debate between who's better. I'd go Brunson as the biggest Dame fan in the world. I think the matchup fits the Knicks. I don't think Indiana's size and athleticism is going to be this crazy culture shock for the New York Knicks, as some are saying it would be. So I'm going to go, listen, it was good for me last series, and it was good for me last series, and I'll do it again. Give me the New York Knicks in 6. Knicks in 6, part 2. New York Knicks win this series, and they will advance, if I'm not mistaken, for the first time in 25 years, to the Eastern Conference Finals. Indiana's had a fantastic season, given what the expectation was. Tyrese Halliburton, while he hasn't been great as of late because of the injury, has been so good. I've loved the kid since he was in Sacramento. Thought he was a steal in the draft that year. It's been great. This is the next time. This is Jalen Brunson's time. They've dealt with injuries. They've overcome them. Give me the New York Knicks in 6, and they will get to the conference finals for the first time in a very long time. Transition now to the Western Conference. Let's start, though. Usually I'd start with the 1 seed. Actually, technically I am starting with the 1 seed. So the Oklahoma City Thunder swept the New Orleans Pelicans, and they will await either the Dallas Mavericks or the LA Clippers. I think Dallas is going to win tonight, wrap it up, but again, we'll do hypotheticals for both, because I do think we'll get a different result with both. If they face the Clippers, if the Clippers win tonight, win on Sunday in Game 7 in advance, I think this is a quick series. Oklahoma City's length, star power, young star power. Obviously, we know what Shea is. Shea's probably going to finish second for league MVP. He's in a remarkable season in the Oklahoma City Thunder. Mark Daigneault, Coach of the Year. Chet Holmgren, Jalen Williams has been the unsung hero to a certain degree of this Oklahoma City team. As we see, as time goes on, whether it's this series or beyond. I think we're going to see what this kid's capable of doing as the co-star to SGA in the postseason, because I do think he's capable of being that. Again, Chet Holmgren, obviously, Lou Dort, Josh Giddey. This team's well coached. This team's well put together. They're really good in the defensive end. They're good in terms of, of rebounding. Excellent shooting team. If they face the Clippers, I think because you got an older Paul George, an older James Harden, older Russell Westbrook, the coaching advantage will go to Ty Lue, but Mark Dagnall will hold his own. I think that'll be a quick series. Give me the Thunder if they face the Los Angeles Clippers. Give me Thunder in 5. I think it'll be very fast. But if they face the Dallas Mavericks, I think we get a different result, because Luka will finally vanquish the dragon that he's been so close to slaying, finally getting past him. He really has this true great number 2 co-star in Kyrie Irving, who's playing his best basketball in my mind since 2016 in Cleveland, when he hit the shot to beat my Warriors. Still haunts me to this day. Kyrie's been awesome in the playoffs. Luka's been equally good, particularly on the defensive end. Dallas has a lot of good pieces, a lot of good shooters. Maxi Kleber was great in Game 5. He's going to be valuable in the series, assuming they take on Oklahoma City if they wrap up, obviously, the LA Clippers. Again, Dallas, there's sort of a misnomer, and I understand why it exists, about the Dallas Mavericks, that, hey, they play a slow, ISO-centric Luka pick-and-roll type of offense. Not anymore. They do that from time to time if they need a buck, if they need Luka to go get them a shot, if things aren't going so well for them. But in general, their half-court offense is much quicker, much more up-paced. They like to get out and transition more now than they used to. So I think that's going to play, again, Oklahoma City can do the same, but Dallas can match this as well. Dallas is not not an old team, not a bunch of whippersnappers. They're right smack dab in the middle. Luka, it feels like he's just now entered his prime. Kyrie is, if he's not at the very end of it, he's either at the very end of his prime or he's out of it, but still a very, very effective player and a very efficient player at this stage still in his career. Jason Kidd, I think, will have the advantage coaching the series. I said coming into the playoffs, let Dallas would get to the conference finals, maintain it today. Get me the Dallas Mavericks if they face the Oklahoma City Thunder to get the upset, win this series in 7 games, win that Game 7 in Oklahoma City. There won't have to be a ton of travel, thankfully, between Dallas or between the Thunder. I think Luka gets the Mavericks to their second conference finals in 3 years, and the Mavs win in 7 games over a Thunder team that obviously has a very, very bright future. Finally, what I think is potentially the most anticipated series of the second round, we'll see it tip off tomorrow night, is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the defending NBA champion Denver Nuggets. So I thought Phoenix would take care of Phoenix in 7 games. Take care of in 7 sounds a little weird. Win in 7 games against Minnesota. I thought they matched up better. I thought they could get Rudy Gobert in the pick and roll. As it turned out, Kevin Durant, who played pretty well in the series, Booker was really up and down. Beal was mostly down the entire series. It was a mismatch the other way. So from a coaching perspective, and I like Vogel, but from a coaching perspective, Chris Finch pushed all the right buttons. Anthony Edwards was great in the fourth quarters of these games, the tight games, and there weren't many of them. In Phoenix, as I predicted coming into the season, I did not think it would hurt them in this year, but I thought it would hurt them beyond, is the, again, lack of a point guard, lack of a true, strong, big man with that Phoenix Suns basketball team. Credit to the Minnesota Timberwolves. They absolutely exposed every single aspect of it. Cat had a great series at the end after working his way back into the lineup. But this is a different monster. This is a team that has a top 5 coach in the NBA. This is a team that has maybe the best closer left in the playoffs in Jamal Murray. And this is a basketball team that has the best basketball player on planet Earth. His name is Nikola Jokic, 2-time MVP and Finals MVP a year ago. I think, again, Barry referenced it early in the show, and I think he's right to a certain degree about the matchup. Minnesota took 2, took 2, while the Nuggets took 2 in the 4-game season series. I get that. But it's the playoffs. And I'm going to say this until I'm blue in the face. It's the playoffs, and it's Rudy Gobert. Get him in the pick and roll. Get him in the pick and roll. Get him on the perimeter. Jamal Murray, I think, is capable of doing that, obviously, in the 2-man game with Jokic. We'll see if the Timberwolves make an adjustment to that, the way Darvin Ham, who's now unemployed, was unable to do with the Los Angeles Lakers. We'll see. I think he's fully capable of doing that. I think, Chris Finch fully capable of doing that. He has shown me a lot in recent playoff games. Timberwolves will push them. It'll be a very close series, again, sort of somewhat similar to that. Looks like we're losing connection. We're losing all connection? Okay, I think we're getting ourselves back. Sorry. All right, we're good. Sorry, I just need to check that. Okay. Okay. So no, I listen. I think Timberwolves will keep these games close, much closer. That obviously there were much, less tougher battles against the Phoenix Suns than they will be in this series. I just think Nikola Jokic, Jamal Murray, that two-man game will really, really expose Rudy Gobert in this. Maybe get Karl-Anthony Towns in foul trouble. So we have it down here. Give me Denver in 6. The Nuggets win this series in 6 games against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they will advance to the Western Conference Finals, and they will take on the Dallas Mavericks. So go back over my predictions. So you saw that Denver winning in 6 games over Minnesota. On the other side of the Western Conference bracket, I think if the Mavericks face the Thunder, they'll win in 7. If the Clippers face the Thunder will win in 5. To the Eastern Conference, I got the Knicks in 6, part 2. Against the Indiana Pacers, advancing to their first conference finals in quite some time. I think 2.5 decades, if I'm not mistaken. And if the Boston Celtics face the Magic, they'll win in 5. If they face the Cavs, they'll also win in 5. I talked about coming into the playoffs. The Boston Celtics should not have more than 2 losses coming into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think gentlemen sweep Miami. Miami got that surprising Game 2 win. I said, I'm going to give the Heat a win just for Heat culture, and they got it. They shot like crazy from 3-point range in Game 2. And then after that, Boston's like, okay, we need to stop screwing around. We need to take care of this series quickly, and none of the games were close after that. So there you go. And I don't think Cleveland or Orlando, particularly in the offensive end of the floor, matches up terribly well with the Boston Celtics. So Boston in 5. So that means we get a Boston, New York. Listen, Boston, New York. Do they not have a playoff history in all their sports or what? Man, so you could get a Boston, New York Eastern Conference Finals, and I think a Denver, Dallas Western Conference Finals, which would pit Jokic versus Luka and would make it. Are they from the same? I could be wrong on this, but I think they might be from the same country, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so let me get this. Let me get some of these graphics uploaded because I want to do this last segment because today, normally I would end a show by doing playoff predictions or any predictions of any kind. Anytime there's a prediction needs to be made, I tend to end the show with it. This show, however, is not the case as we can get these graphics loaded. So this may surprise folks, but I've only been into Star Wars for about a year, almost exactly. So crap, it looks like we're dealing with rough connection again. Okay, sorry. I'm watching my monitor because my thing says the connection's bad. It looks like we're good. Okay, so let me put that together again. I've only been a Star Wars fan for about a year. My sister, shout out to her, she got me into it in like the spring of last year. We watched the original trilogy original trilogy prequel sequels, and then I've gotten into Mandalorian, Ahsoka, the Obi-Wan Kenobi, some of the Disney Plus stuff. And I am now officially hooked. I am hooked in every way, shape, and form. Love it, from start to finish. And I did a segment last year where I compared Star Wars characters to athletes, right? Like I forget some of my comparisons. I know I compared at one point LeBron to Darth Vader because LeBron and Darth Vader were literally both were deemed the chosen one. Both went through the early stages of their career or Anakin Skywalker's life where they are just this uber talented. People are kind of jealous of them, but they feel a sense of disrespect. LeBron couldn't quite get past teams in the playoffs like Boston or Orlando because he didn't have enough help around him. Anakin felt disrespected because the Jedi wouldn't appoint him to be the council, even though he was clearly good enough to be on it. And so they essentially, I didn't think LeBron really turned to the dark side, to be honest with you, but Anakin definitely did, became Darth Vader. LeBron went to the Heat. Everybody hated LeBron James, but then I say this in quotes because I don't really think it was as big as some people think as far as the redemption arc. I don't think LeBron needed to be redeemed, but redeemed himself by going back to Cleveland, back to his hometown, and winning a championship in 2016. Anakin obviously redeemed himself. Spoiler alert, but the movie, actually, you know what? This is a spoiler. The movie came out 41 years ago, okay? Is Anakin obviously, or Vader, redeemed himself, brought balance to the Force by destroying Palpatine to save his son, Luke Skywalker. So there you go. So again, that was some of the comparisons I did. So today, May the 4th is tomorrow. Again, I've got my Star Wars hat on right now. I've got this Darth Vader, like Halloween themed t-shirt on as well to celebrate this momentous occasion. May the 4th is tomorrow. So this idea came from Barry, and I mentioned that early in the show, mentioned it to him. What if we compared midichlorian count, which only Star Wars fans will understand what that is. And I'll define midichlorian for those that may not know in just a second. Midichlorian count for sports teams relative to their characters. Now, more on the criteria for that in just a second. But first, the criteria for midichlorians, the definition of midichlorians. We can put this up here right now. This is according to, I think, WookieFandom.com, but I'll take their word for it. Midichlorian, the scientific name for a species of sentient and microscopic organisms that inhabited the cells of every life form. Their existence was integral to the all-encompassing energy field known as the Force, connecting the living force to the cosmic force. And Qui-Gon Jinn, played by Liam Neeson, explains this in episode 1. I remember seeing something like that was a really big controversy when The Phantom Menace came out in 1999, which I'm actually going to see that movie tomorrow for its 25th anniversary. So I'm very excited to see it on the big screen. So under that definition, midichlorians, what it means, how basically in the simplest terms possible, it's the biological structure that makes you strong in the Force. That's basically what it is. So we can go ahead and put this up and look at the sports team's equivalent to Star Wars characters through midichlorians. So if we can get the background music going on right now, here we go for this segment. Jedi, Sith, you know the whole drill. Here we go. We will start with the first one. So I thought about this one for a little bit. Is the Boston Celtics, okay? The Boston Celtics. I decided to equate the Boston Celtics in terms of midichlorian count. I gave them 19,000, which, according to StatCrunch.com, that's where we're getting my midichlorian equivalent totals. I give the Boston Celtics 19,000 midichlorians, which is equivalent to that of Master Yoda. So, again, the Celtics, Yoda, 19,000 midichlorians. Essentially, the reason I'm doing this is because first of all, both are green. Second of all, both have a long history of being very powerful. The Celtics, of course, winning 1 million championships, 11 to be exact, back in the 50s, 60s, I believe the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Obviously, Master Yoda lived to, I think, about 900 years old. And so, again, great in their prime. They were basically unstoppable. But Yoda did, if you watch the prequels, Yoda did struggle at times with an old Count Dooku, and he lost, like straight up lost, to Palpatine at the end of Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. The Celtics are kind of similar. Since the 1980s, since the year 1990 rolled around, they have one NBA championship, which they won in 2008. So it's like, they're great. This year they won 64 games. They're still great, but we're still sort of waiting for them to get back to what they were, and they may never do that. Boston getting back to the years of winning 11 championships, that's not realistic for anybody. Yoda going back to the days of being what he was at his peak. I mean, I can imagine 500 and 600-year-old Yoda. The guy had to be unstoppable. So there you go. That's the midichlorian count for the Celtics, 19,000. To the Buffalo Bills. Well, but the Buffalo Bills was a good one. I'm going to give them, make sure I get this total right, I'm going to give the Buffalo Bills 12,000 midichlorians. And that is, and I was shocked to see what the equivalent of this was, 12,000 midichlorians. That is how many midichlorians Darth Maul has. Okay, so 12,000 Buffalo Bills, Darth Maul. So the reason I gave him that many is this. You're like, Bryson, the Bills have never won a Super Bowl. Yes, but they didn't go to 4 straight in the 90s. And in the last 5 years, they've been to a conference title game. They've played the Kansas City Chiefs to the wire. The dynasty in the NFL, the Kansas City Chiefs, played them down to the wire. But like Darth Maul, they've got a kryptonite. The Buffalo Bills' kryptonite in the 90s was the Dallas Cowboys. And really anybody they met in the Super Bowl, basically the entire NFC. And the Buffalo Bills' kryptonite today is the Kansas City Chiefs. They just can't get by Kansas City. Darth Maul just couldn't beat Obi-Wan Kenobi. He couldn't do it. Obi-Wan beat him as a freaking Padawan in Phantom Menace. Beat him in, I think Rebels when they were both older. So again, and he kind of lives rent-free. Obi-Wan kind of lives rent-free in Darth Maul's head. There's parts of Darth Maul's story that makes you feel kind of sorry for him. You feel sorry for Buffalo Bills fans. They've never gotten to experience the thrill and joy of winning a Super Bowl, no matter how bad or how loyal they are to their teams. So that to me is the equivalent. Buffalo Bills, Darth Maul, both have 12,000 midichlorians. Looking down the list. Let's go to my Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I liked this one. 17,000 midichlorians, which is equivalent to that of Obi-Wan Kenobi. So 17,000. That's a lot, but it's nothing mind-blowing. Top 10, Pittsburgh Steelers, 6 Super Bowl championships, most ever. Obi-Wan Kenobi has about as good of a track record in duels as anybody. I mentioned that he essentially owned Darth Maul. I mentioned the fact that he beat Darth Vader straight up, when Anakin first became Vader in episode 3, he beat Darth Vader in the Obi-Wan Kenobi series although losing to him at first. And the only time he lost to Darth Vader in episode 4 was when obviously he gave himself up to become one with the Force to help Luke Skywalker. So again, almost flawless history. Obi-Wan Kenobi had every excuse to turn to the dark side, never did. Pittsburgh Steelers, just a well-run, well-operated franchise. But lately, it's like, you're waiting for a little more. You're looking for a little more flash. Obi-Wan's not necessarily the flashiest. He's not Anakin or Luke, but just get the job done. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers. So that's, to me, Pittsburgh has 17,000 midichlorians, which is equivalent to Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's move on to, what else do we have? Okay, Miami Heat. I put the Miami Heat on this list. I'm giving the Miami Heat 23,000 midichlorians. You're like, Bryson Carver, what are you doing? The Miami Heat have not been around for that long, but they have been as successful as any team, in the Eastern Conference in that span. They got 3 NBA championships in the 21st century. They've been to 3 other finals, 4 other finals rather, in that span. You always look at them as kind of the underdog. They're not supposed to win certain series that they're involved with, but they just have good leadership. They're well run. And when you absolutely need them the most, they get the job done. 23,000, that is equivalent to that of Princess Leia. Okay, again, all of this, of course, is according to StatCrunch.com. So he had 23,000 midichlorians. That is the same that Princess Leia has, because obviously Princess Leia is the ultimate leader. She obviously in the sequels became General Leia Organa. And again, when you needed Princess Leia to come through for you, she was able to all throughout the original trilogy, throughout large portions of even the sequel trilogy as well, which I know everybody hates, but obviously she was able to get it done as well. Even when they're massive underdogs, you just rely on them to be able to come through. So 23,000 midichlorians. That may seem like a lot for a lot of people, but I've always respected the Miami Heat. So that is what I am giving them. Okay, next one. So look on that list. Who have I not done? Okay, let's go to our next one. San Antonio Spurs. They also have 23,000 midichlorians. So they won 5 NBA championships. That, I believe, is the 4th most of all time. And ever since they've gotten the leadership of Greg Popovich, the upper management they've gotten in San Antonio, their peak was about as impressive in terms of the longevity as we've seen in the history of the NBA. So in the Tim Duncan, Greg Popovich era, the first title came in 1999. The last title came in 2014. Won 5 titles over the course of 15 years. Really only the Patriots can say they did something similar to that. Obviously, the Patriots won more Super Bowls, but that to me is the equivalent. But the Spurs after that, had some decent playoff runs, then went to just being flat out terrible. But now, with the arrival of Victor Wembanyama, the future couldn't be more bright. Where it's, again, the Spurs. Great history during their dynasty, flat out awful in the middle. And now that they got Wemby, give it 5 to 10 years. I think they're going to stack some more Larry O'Brien trophies. That, to me, 23,000 midichlorians is the equivalent of Luke Skywalker. The reason I say that is because Luke Skywalker sustains this greatness of everything you're supposed to be in a Jedi, right? He's strong in the Force in episode 4, but untapped potential. He takes on Darth freaking Vader in episode 5 and lost his hand, but still ended up alive. And then episode 6, he beat Vader straight up and indirectly destroyed the Emperor because Vader saved him by beating Palpatine. But middle Luke Skywalker's life, which I hate the way they portrayed him in the sequels, hate it. So does Mark Hamill. Essentially, he became this old, miserable, bitter, curmudgeon-y guy. But at the end of episode 8, and he essentially gives his life to do this. Remember, he transports through the Force. He transports himself to take on Kylo Ren to allow what was left of the Resistance to escape the planet of Crate, which was able to fuel them again to eventually winning the war in episode 9. So, again, rough patch for Luke in the middle. Amazing early and just great, classic, great late into his life. And for the Spurs, I think they're about to enter a similar stage with Victor Wembanyama. So there you go. 23,000 midichlorians do the San Antonio Spurs have. Who do we have left? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 left. Okay. Let's move on to the Golden State Warriors. The Golden State Warriors have 18,000 midichlorians. That is equivalent to that of Mace Windu, played by the great Samuel L. Jackson. So 18,000 midichlorians. So the Warriors, the Spurs had a rough patch, but it wasn't that long. The Golden State Warriors, for 40 years, most of those absolutely sucked. Were horribly well run. But now that they're back on top, kind of arrogant, but they back it up. Mace Windu is not the most likable character in the prequel era trilogy, but he's really good. I mean, it was going to be Palpatine straight up if Anakin hadn't come in and screwed things up. But powerful with the Force, great with the lightsaber, probably the best Jedi with the lightsaber at that particular point in time outside of Anakin. And so, again, the Warriors, not the easiest to like. I mean, they're very easy to like for me as a Warriors fan. But just, again, they were always the last team standing. If it hadn't for Anakin, Mace Windu would have been able to say the same thing and be able to knock off Palpatine, but that was not the case. So Golden State Warriors, 18,000 midichlorians. We have 4 left. Kansas City Chiefs. And I'm going to get hate for this one. 23,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia, also equivalent to that of Rey Skywalker. Yeah, I'm going to say it. Rey Skywalker. She's a Skywalker, guys. Stop it. Leia's not a real Organa. We call her that anyway. Point is, Kansas City, really good throughout their, like, always really good. They almost never sucked. And then now that they got Mahomes, now that they figured it out, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, they're darn near unstoppable. That's Rey. Rey lived a tough life as a scavenger on her home planet of Jakku. The potential was there. She was, was good with the staff, and then eventually with the lightsaber took on Kylo Ren. But as she was trained by Luke, trained by Leia, became stronger in the Force, she was darn near unstoppable. So Rey and the Kansas City Chiefs, 23,000 midichlorians. Again, Kansas City, I mean, what are you going to do now? Kansas City at their weakest point last year couldn't beat them. Palpatine had Rey dead to rights in episode 9. Still couldn't beat her. So that to me is the equivalent. Kansas City Chiefs and Rey Skywalker, 23,000 midichlorians. Next up, New York Yankees, only baseball team in this list. 20,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Emperor Palpatine. Really, really powerful. Really powerful. Like at their peak, you didn't even want to come near them. But they're not quite as effective as of late, and they have a clear Achilles heel. Palpatine's Achilles heel is hubris. And in doing so, not understanding the fact that trying to electrocute somebody with your Force lightning Sith stuff onto a lightsaber literally never works. It didn't work with Mace Windu. It worked terribly for you against Rey in episode 9. Like, it just doesn't work. The New York Yankees' Achilles heel is they have a lot of home run hitters, and that's essentially it. They don't have a lot. Now, I know they added Juan Soto. They've tried to right those wrongs, but as of late, the roster construction has been weird. It's what's held them back against Houston in the playoffs year after year. They haven't put together great pitching staffs. That's kind of an Achilles heel that they have as well, where it's, again, Yankees, again, kind of similar to Boston. At their peak, good Lord, 27 championships, but they haven't won in 15 years. Haven't been to a World Series in the last 15 years. And Palpatine at the end, it feels like in episode 6, right? Return of the Jedi, which is my personal favorite Star Wars movie. Kind of tends to rely, I mean, still really powerful. It's got the cool Force lightning and everything, but, probably shouldn't try and electrocute somebody when they have a lightsaber to block it. Just saying. So 20,000 midichlorians is the count for the Yankees and Palpatine. Last 2, Lakers. Hate them. I really, really hate them a lot as a Warriors fan, which is why I delighted in their first round exit on Monday. I'm giving them the most midichlorians, 27,000. That is equivalent to that of, do we have it? There you go. Darth Vader, 27,000 midichlorians. Anakin Skywalker, Darth Vader, that's the LA Lakers. They're always powerful throughout their life. I mean, they just are. They were great in the 60s. Didn't win a lot of championships. Boston did, but they got to the finals all those years. Won a title. Again, the late 60s, early 70s were amazing in the 80s, were pretty good in the 90s, amazing in the early 2000s, great in the late 2000s, kind of terrible through points of the 2010s, but enter the 2020s with a championship. They've got the playoffs, LeBron, Kobe, Shaq, the history, obviously, Magic, Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West, just a long list of all-time great players. The Lakers are just almost never bad, and not only that, when they're great, they're really great. They've sustained, unlike the Yankees, unlike the Celtics, they've sustained greatness over the course of a long period of time. It's why I think LeBron's the GOAT. It's why I think Tom Brady is the GOAT in the NFL. Anakin's always unstoppable. Essentially, the only reason he died at the end of episode 6 is because Palpatine, because he's a jerk, put his suit together when he was obviously burned in episode 3. Put his suit together so that if Palpatine wanted to electrocute him, he basically could through the suit. But Anakin is a menace in the prequels, particularly in episode 3 and in the Clone Wars series. Amazing with the lightsaber. And in the original trilogy, and even prior to the original trilogy, throughout the Empire, I mean, the guy's a monster. We see the end of Rogue One. If you want to know how powerful Darth Vader is and the fear that goes around Darth Vader, just watch the last minute and a half of Rogue One, a Star Wars story. That'll tell you what Darth Vader brings to the table. I don't like it. Nobody likes Vader. Everybody feared him to the nth degree. It's kind of how I feel right now about the Los Angeles. Not right now about the Los Angeles Lakers, but if we're looking historically, that's what they are. And finally, last one. Cleveland Browns. 0 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Jar Jar Binks. Come on now. I see all these internet accounts. Jar Jar Binks, the secret Sith Lord. Man, get out of here with that. Get out, Jar Jar Binks. Cleveland Browns, this is our year. Oh, Cleveland fans drive me insane with that. It's this our year. It's going to be like the 60s with Otto Graham and Jim Brown. No, it ain't. Now, the difference is nobody has expectations of, nobody except for people on Reddit boards have expectations of Jar Jar Binks doing anything special. Nobody outside of Cleveland, Ohio has expectations for the Browns to do anything special, but that's the equivalent. Okay? No Super Bowl appearances in their history. I think 1 or 2 conference championship appearances in their history. Jar Jar Binks, he's a Sith Lord. No, he's not. No, he's not. Okay, so there you go. That's my fun little segment there as far as the midichlorian equivalent in Star Wars. Let's go back over the list before we get out of here. Buffalo Bills, 12,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Darth Maul. Miami Heat, 23,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Princess Leia. Boston Celtics, 19,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Yoda. I forgot the Dallas Cowboys. They were on my list too. I literally forgot to mention them. 11,700 midichlorians, equivalent to that of General Grievous. The reason I said that I did that equivalent is, boy, Dallas is good when they're up on you. General Grievous is good when he's got an advantage, but when he's playing from behind, yikes. San Antonio Spurs, 23,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Luke Skywalker. Pittsburgh Steelers, 17K midichlorians, equivalent to that of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Golden State Warriors, 18,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Mace Windu. Kansas City Chiefs, 23,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Rey Skywalker. New York Yankees, 20,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Emperor Palpatine. Los Angeles Lakers, as much as I hate to say it, 27,000 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Darth Vader. And finally, the Cleveland Browns, 0 midichlorians, equivalent to that of Jar Jar Binks. I'm just saying. Philip is right. Best character in Star Wars is R2-D2. Well, look, he's in every movie. Listen, in every movie, survives every battle. Even in episode 1. So it's, again, I'm seeing tomorrow, so I'm getting hyped on Phantom Menace juice. But our first appearance of R2-D2, he's amongst these other, droids to fix the ship when they're getting cornered by the Separatists, and R2-D2 is the only one that survives. I mean, they say, R2 and 3PO are in every movie. No, all due respect to 3PO, and all due respect to the great Anthony Daniels, who portrayed him for 9 films. But R2 is the one doing the flying, doing the battles. Philip, see, he's tripping here. Jar Jar's a close second. Don't hate on him. Listen, let me tell you this. Ahmed Best, who played Jar Jar Binks, is on a list that unfortunately is far too long of actors who got mercilessly hated for them and for their character and how they portray them the whole 9. It's just silly. What they, the things that they had to deal with. So I'm not hating on Ahmed Best, because Ahmed Best got some crap back in the day. You see Hayden Christensen had to darn near go into hiding because of the stuff he took for playing Anakin Skywalker. Now Hayden Christensen's beloved, by the way, as he should be. He's probably the most gifted actor with a lightsaber I've ever seen. You look at every single actor that's held a lightsaber, Hayden Christensen to me is by a mile the best. By a mile. I mean, people, talk about the Disney lightsabers, whether it's the sequel trilogy or the Disney Plus series, like the actors look like the lightsabers are a little heavy, and they tell you, yeah, they're kind of heavy, especially relative to that of the first 6 movies, or at least that were released. If you watch the Ahsoka series, which I personally loved, the scene where Ahsoka and Anakin are fighting in the Force Netherworld, and I'm like, Hayden's using a Disney lightsaber, and it looks effortless. The guy's just gifted, so kudos to him. Hayden Christensen got hate. Daisy Ridley got hate. Kelly Marie Tran got hate. The little girl who played Leia in Obi-Wan Kenobi, the woman who played Reva in Obi-Wan Kenobi, there is. I heard somebody say this. I think there's a lot of truth to it. Again, I'm new to the Star Wars fan base, but I do love it tremendously. That nobody hates Star Wars more than Star Wars fans. I think there's a lot of truth to that. Like, if it is not absolutely perfect, they ridicule you for it. And by the way, is a movie, again, some movies are just objectively great movies and objectively bad movies. But generally speaking, I mean, there's some people who like, some people think, a lot of folks think Empire Strikes Back is the best Star Wars movie. I've got it third on my list. I've got it third. To me, Return of the Jedi is my personal favorite. I like the last 30 minutes to an hour of that movie is just amazing. And I've got Revenge of the Sith second. The last hour of Revenge of the Sith to me is the best hour, most entertaining, most gripping hour of any Star Wars movie out there. Easily. In the future, I'll do like a Bryson's Best 10, or really Bryson's Best 11, because there's been 11 movies that's come out if you include Rogue One and Solo. I'll do like a Bryson's Best 11 of Star Wars movies, but yeah, that's what I got. It is it's incredible. Listen, I did not know what I was missing, but shout out to my sister for getting me into it, for sure. All right, that is all the time we have for today's show. Appreciate everybody stopping by, as always. Be sure to catch Carving It Up live on Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube. Right here on Twitter. And as well as the Carving It Up YouTube channel and the Grid Network YouTube channel. And of course, be sure to like, share, comment, and please take 2 seconds out of your day. Hit that big red subscribe button down there. Helps the channel grow exponentially. We're trying to get to 1,000. We are that close. We're over 975 subscribers. We're that close to 1K. So if you have not subscribed, just takes a couple seconds. Big red subscribe button down there. Hit it, and you're part of the Carving Up family. If you have subscribed, thank you so much. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. Please tell your friends about it, your family about it, everybody you know about it, except for your sleeping cat, about Carving It Up live. We're trying to get to 1K. We are very, very, very close. So hope we can get that to that in short order. Also, just as importantly, be sure to go subscribe to the Grid Network. That is GRYD, the Grid Podcast Network, right here on YouTube, as well as any and everywhere you get your favorite podcast, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, any and everywhere you get your favorite podcasts. You can find it all on the Grid Network on YouTube, Twitter, all social media platforms, as well as on the Grid Network website, where Patrick Brown writes some great articles for the Grid. Definitely be sure to check that stuff out as well. May the 4th be with you all. Like I said, I feel very, very lucky as like a sci-fi movies fan, because last Friday, my sister and I went to go see Alien, which to me is my all-time favorite horror movie. All-time favorite horror movie. I personally like the first one better than the second. We could settle that debate another day. But it's the 45-year anniversary of that movie's release. Got to see it in theaters, and it was absolutely amazing to see on the big screen. And I've never seen a Star Wars movie on the big screen. Phantom Menace is going to be the first, so Duel of the Fates is going to hit a little bit differently tomorrow night. So I think I'm not like I'm doing an ad for AMC Theaters, but I think they're showing it till like Wednesday, I think. So if you're a Star Wars fan, I would definitely recommend, because I'm looking forward to it. All right, I will see you guys on Monday's show. Please be sure to stay safe out there. Please be sure to take care of your physical as well as your mental health. And please, please, please be sure to contact your local state representatives and senators to demand change for gun violence in America, no matter where you lean, right, left, center. No matter what anybody tries to gaslight you on either side of the aisle, this is an issue that impacts all of us and is a multi-layered, multifaceted issue that we need to address with a number of solutions, because it impacts all of us. We got to stop it. Point blank, period. All right. Dallas is going to wrap it up tonight against the Clippers. Magic, I think, are going to extend it to Game 7. Go Orlando. I'm just saying go Orlando because they're playing Cleveland. I'll just tell you right now. All right. See y'all on Monday. Stay safe out there. God bless y'all. Peace out. Oh, and by the way, this is the way. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.